Welcome to Golden Mastermind Seminars Radio with your host, Jeffrey Combs.
Good afternoon, Jeffrey Combs. It is 2 Tuesday. Good to be here with you on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. It is fall. It seems like summer here in northern Central California. Good to be here with you on Facebook Live at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. It's a breathe, release, and let go day. And today's content is called Living on Purpose. So if you're on my email list, you will also have a syllabus that gives you the bullet points for the Facebook Live podcast. This is a podcast and goes directly to my website, goldenmastermind.com. For 26 years, I've been hosting either a live conference call or a live Facebook Live podcast, originally starting out at 5 o'clock in the afternoon in 1998, and then transitioning that in the year 2000 to a 10:30 Eastern Standard Time, More Heart Than Talent Live. And that was on a live conference call where I would have upwards of 200 to 500 people on every Tuesday, More Heart Than Talent Live. And some of you were on that live conference call back in the day. I know Josh Waxman, who is bringing his teammates to today's call, originally started out with me at 18 years old on my More Heart Than Talent Mindset call. So if you're here this afternoon, thank you very much. If you're part of Josh Waxman's team, I'm honored to have you here. John McFadden, good to see you this afternoon. And we're going to have a great Facebook Live podcast this afternoon because the podcast is on purpose. Now, initially, I write the podcast out like this. So this is also the recipe for how I write a book. So I write a book, I find a book title. I've written 5 books. I come up with the title. Then I come up with the page count, word count, and then the table of contents. And then I would record the content, and then I would have it transcribed and turn that into a book. That was my recipe over a 20-year period for my first 5 books. And then I wrote chapters in multiple books that I was featured in throughout the world. So today's Facebook Live, and Josh, I was singing your praises here, and thank you for bringing your team with me. You and I are moving into our 11th year of collaboration. Josh hired me to be his coach in March of 2014, and here we are moving into 2015. And for those of you who are looking for a mentor in the financial services industry or wealth management or your dialogue with money or infinite banking, I recommend Josh and his teammates. Josh has a group of teammates that I coach who I am absolutely connected to and highly endorse. So if you're on my live today, thank you very much for being here. And also Josh Moran is an exceptional man that I also endorse. I've had the privilege of coaching these 2 men for going on 10 years. Today's topic is called Living on Purpose, being on purpose in time. So purpose is your inspiration. So many people wander their entire life and they never really find their life's purpose. And purpose is an inspiration that burns, and it's a slow burn, and it's a methodical process. And it's very systematic, and it's organized, and it's detailed. And in that purpose, you really begin to find yourself as an entrepreneur, and you can also find yourself in self. Now, there is a book called The Eye of the I, and I must give Josh the credit because even though I owned the book, he suggested I read it. It had been collecting dust for years. But chapter 2 in the book, The I, that's I, the initial, of the I, EYE, Chapter 2, The Quest, is groundbreaking content because it breaks down for you how consciousness was evolved, how it's calibrated, and how it's measured, and the science in the inner game of consciousness. In understanding that content, it will assist you to understand the separation between higher consciousness and the lower self, and the gateway to the bridge that brings you from anxiety, fear, and doubt, and worry. The gateway to that is courage. Courage is not an emotion, it's a quality, and it requires the courage to pursue your purpose. Now, many people will try and rob you of your dream, talk you out of your purpose, tell you to grow up, get real, stop chasing rainbows. There were relatives in my family that were very critical of me, and they told me to grow up. get real. And in a southern drawl, one of them said to me, them things don't work. Now, I was chasing my dreams in network marketing and direct sales in the late 80s, and then moved into the higher level of that into a professional company called Herbalife. That was my first, well, I was in Amway, but didn't really access it. I was in prepaid legal at its inception, but took the quantum leap in a billion-dollar company at the time called Herbalife, which had the great Mark Hughes, the late Mark Hughes, who was the founder of Herbalife, and Jim Rohn, who was their speaker. Jim Rohn was not an Herbalife speaker. Jim Rohn was a producer in two major companies, one called Bestline, owned by Bill Bailey, who I shared the stage with in 2004, and in a company called Holiday Magic. And if you look up Holiday Magic, it had a lot of FTC challenges. Patrick Penn Warren was the owner, way ahead of his time, and Jim Rohn was a millionaire in both of those businesses. And Jim Rohn was very inspirational for me to find my purpose. I used to watch Jim Rohn's VHSs and listen to his audio cassettes back in the day. I was also listening to Think and Grow Rich in audio cassette, and then I was listening to Frederick Lehrman's Prosperity Consciousness. So your purpose is from your soul. It's your soul's purpose. It means you find yourself. It may be in a business, it may be in your own creativity, in your inspiration, but it's what inspires you. That's your purpose. Your purpose means you find what you're good at and you're able to access it. Now, for me, I hit rock bottom when I was 31 years old, 11 months, and 18 days. That's when I got sober. So 31 years old, 11 months, and 18 days on December 18th, 1988. That was my first day of sobriety. And I was in a heroin clinic, in a bed, and I was near death from delirium tremens. On day number 5, I was rolled into a 12-step meeting. It was an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting in this county hospital in Ceres, California, which is Modesto, California. I was rolled in there, and that was day number 5 of sobriety for me. And at that day, I decided that I would not drink again. And I felt that God had a purpose for me. I didn't know what my purpose was, but I knew that it was out there. And I'll never forget saying that I will not squander this opportunity. I was a chronic sabotager at the time. I managed to screw everything up. If I attracted a great relationship, I would screw it up. If it didn't matter what it was, I would find a way to get in trouble, get arrested, get a DUI, a public intoxication, assault and battery, a hit and run. I had a series of these situations that I kept sabotaging myself. I went from all-American boy as a senior in high school, college basketball player for 2 years, and by then I was already off the cliff of addiction with mushrooms, LSD, methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, but it's specifically alcohol and codependency, and traumatic relationships were my drugs of choice. So I didn't have the 2-factor, the 4-factor, the 5-factor. I was an addict of the 10-factor. Whatever it was for me to create that edge, that neurochemical high, that cardio cocktail, I was seeking it. Adrenaline, thrills, sneaking, pulling it off, smuggling, getting by, soulless with no purpose. So when I became clean and sober, I knew that God had a plan for me. Now at the time I was not a Christian. I didn't know what the Bible was. I had started reading, but through that process, I knew that I had a purpose. I didn't know what the purpose was, but I knew I would find it. And I knew if I would just stay in the game long enough that I would figure it out. Now, I was committed to not having a job, and so I went 100% into free enterprise, and I managed to last a few years, just barely getting by on fumes, broken up cars I'd hide down the block, beat up suits, and I was barely making a living. I definitely wasn't designing life. And I was listening to Burke Hedges at the time, who wrote the book, Who Stole the American Dream, The Pipeline Parable. I was watching his VHS, Burke Hedges back in the day, he was an Amway speaker and had been successful in a water filtration company called National Safety Association. So I was listening to the content. This was the early 90s, and I was doing whiteboard presentations, and I was crushing it, but I was making no money. I was making $5,000, $10,000 a month in a breakaway pay plan, which was a miracle at the time. However, my phone bills back in the day were $2,000 a month, and a cell phone bill was another $1,000 a month, because cell phone bills in the early 90s were $1 a minute with a brick phone, if you remember those back in the day. And I was purposeful, but I didn't really know my purpose. After 8 years in the network marketing and direct sales industry, I had my first $500,000 year. Year number 9, 7-figure year. Year number 10, I crossed over into starting my coaching business, and that was 1998. The very end of 1998, I launched Golden Mastermind Seminars Incorporated, and that became my purpose. I didn't know it at the time, but I was teaching sales skills, prospecting skills. I was teaching how to close sales, and it was amazing because people were coming to me and hiring me. It was just like, it was magical. I mean, I had 2 major companies hiring me to be their mindset coach at the same time. And I was traveling. I started traveling and speaking, started developing my brand. This was 1998, 1999, 2000, 2002. I started creating my audio courses, my branded products, Psychology of Prospecting, Psychology of Closing, Personalities for Success, the Animal Factor on the 4 main personality types. I created Principles for Prosperity, and I started to feel like I'm starting to feel my purpose. And so I became very skilled at coaching, speaking, and creating content. That was the trifecta, and I was doing this all at the same time. But I didn't really find that purpose until 2006. In 2006, I crossed the bridge. So after 8 years of owning my own business, I was very skilled at coaching, speaking, and I was a 7-figure income earner, but here's what changed my life. I came across a book in Walnut Creek, California, which is about 50 miles in the East Bay. It's in an affluent area. It's behind Oakland in the hills, where Black Hawk, Walnut Creek, and San Ramon is, and Pleasant, and it's in the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay. And I went into a little bookstore called Dolphin Dreaming, and they had just a few books on the shelves, and one of the books was called Power versus Force. I picked that book up. I started skimming that book. I eventually started reading it. I became magnetized to the chapter Power versus Force. I'd already started teaching the skills of letting go, but that book took me across the bridge of the bridge. I was already on the other side, but I didn't really understand consciousness until I started reading that book. So I began studying consciousness and teaching it along with everything else that I was being and doing at the time, and that's when I found my purpose. I knew that my purpose was to teach letting go skills. And I took the skills that I was learning from Dr. David Hawkins, and I began to next level them, because I began to apply them to 12-step programs. I began to apply them to addictions. I began to apply them to business. I saw that letting go is the most important skill that you can master, and it's a skill that you never really master, but you begin to master the inner game of it, the mechanism of it. So that was me. I found my purpose by being on purpose, and my purpose found me. And so when I began to really feel that, not only was it a higher level of consciousness, but it was a higher level of inspiration. And I realized that I could teach letting go skills up until my casket, because I became so inspired to teach people the most difficult neurological skill called letting go. Even though letting go is only 2 words, it could take you the rest of your lifetime to master it, and you have to be patient because you'll never master it. It's like Tai Chi. You never really master it, but you start to understand the mastery of it. And that means that you start to understand that letting go is my ability to separate my feelings. So a feeling is a byproduct of an event. So an event that is traumatic or that the body holds on to, or that the body forgets, represses, suppresses, or stuffs down will create neurological conditions that become behaviors. They become autonomic reactions, which is fight or flight, then leads to the emotional code. The emotions in that code are anger, hate, rage, frustration, disappointment, and especially resentment. That's the anger family. Then there's abandonment, rejection. That's the emotional, that's the connected, the emotions between men, women, families, husbands and wives, abandonment and rejection. Grief, apathy, pride, and overwhelmed feelings. Those are the main emotions that will keep you in anxiety, fear, and doubt. And courage is the quality that brings you across the bridge. Courage is the rigorous honesty required to access acceptance. Because in the skill of letting go, and it is a skill, when you're able to accept your character defects, your flaws in rigorous honesty without being sensitive and defensive. Now, this is a key component right here. When your mouth moves and you say, I'm teachable, and someone's actually attempting to teach you, but if you react to the stimulus and turn that mentor or that teacher into your perpetrator, your violator, your parent, or your abuser, then you are the mind-body connection to the events that shape the feelings. You are sabotaging the opportunity to create a connection with that person, and then that will show up over the course of your lifetime in multiple ways. And then you'll ask yourself, how come no good people show up in my team? How come no leaders are starting? How come no one's duplicating? Because the payoff is you keep recreating the same situation to fulfill the same feeling. The most difficult aspect of my purpose in teaching what I am on purpose, purposeful, is to assist people to understand that if you're ever going to find your purpose, it's going to be your responsibility to let go of the payoff that keeps you recreating the same situation to fulfill the same feelings. So your purpose is not to make money. That's what the Fed does. And so the Fed prints money on a 9-to-1 ratio. Follow Josh Waxman. He's an expert on teaching people the laws that govern money. And so the more that you understand that your purpose is not about money, you require money and you deserve it, but that's not your purpose. And so people will say, I want to make a boatload of money. Well, that's great, but that's still not your purpose. Your purpose is your soul. Your purpose is your inspiration. Your purpose is what moves you. Your purpose is what inspires you. Your purpose is when you wake up and you're in it before you even know what you're doing. When you wake up and you're inspired, because it is not only a day, it's an exceptional day because you're in it. And you're in it because you're on purpose and you have a purpose. And your purpose is to lead by example. Your purpose is whatever your faith is. I'm a Christian, so my purpose is to lead a good Christian life, serving my God, developing service and value, being able to lead by example, being rigorously honest. See, purpose doesn't mean you're going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And many people, they get so overwhelmed and they're so addicted to attention that they get confused and they want to do these athletic feats and they want to make these metric climbs to prove that they can do something. Well, that's not purpose. That's pride. And so your pride isn't your purpose. Your pride oftentimes is what leads you to sabotage. And until you can let go, until you separate your feelings, separate my feelings from your family. If your family was traumatic and your family were narcissist, if you're an adult child of alcoholics and you continue to have this trauma bond with them, one of your purposes is to have the courage to let go of the guilt that you hold on to and the resentment you hold on to. That would be a purpose because that will bring you across the bridge. And then you have to go across the bridge and stay there. Your purpose isn't to own a big watch. Your purpose isn't to own a shiny car. I own them. I own a nice watch. That's a 1961 Rolex. I've owned 13 cars at one time. But that still wasn't my purpose. That gave me inspiration, and that was pride to be able to accomplish owning those cars. But that still wasn't the value proposition. The value proposition and your purpose is in people. And that's for you to understand what that means. Somewhere within you, your purpose is some level of connection with people, whether it's intimate in a soul relationship, in a business relationship, in a mentoring relationship, in a leadership relationship. Somewhere in there, you'll find your purpose. Or your purpose will find you. If you're on purpose, your purpose will find you. And your purpose, once again, it's a synonym, and it's a word that has many meanings, but what it means to me is it means inspiration. It's the fire that burns. And my fire doesn't rage because that burns out. My fire is a very slow burn. My purpose is to assist people to understand why they do what they do. I am very gifted at the quantum physics, the brain, and consciousness, and understanding what goes on behind the veil. I'm very skilled at understanding what goes on between the brain and the gut, and I've studied it for years, and that became my purpose, is being able to assist people to understand that there's a cause that creates the effect, and this becomes why you do what you do, and then being able to separate the feelings from the events that shape them, that create your sabotages, codependency, enabling, over-obligating, doing more for others, starting over, being disappointed, being frustrated, being angry, being resentful. My purpose is to heal me while healing others at the same time, and that is my purpose. It's your responsibility to develop, to create, to be inspired, to access your purpose. Now, in your early beginning, your purpose is to be successful because you're required to be successful so you have the money to pay your rent. You require the money to pay your rent so you can continue to buy the leads or whatever your business is. That is a component of your purpose, and that is your exterior purpose, but your interior purpose is from your soul. And that is your responsibility to find that, figure that out on this journey, to find what inspires you. And it could be a business, whatever it is, that's your responsibility, and that's the quest. That is what you're seeking, that is what you're searching for, is your soul's purpose. Because when you find that, you will be at rest. You will not be restless. You will not be overwhelmed. You'll stop worrying about money. You'll stop worrying about what other people are going to think of you. And you'll have very clearly defined boundaries, because in that purpose, you will find your humility. And when you find your humility, you have really crossed the bridge to finding your purpose. Because when you're in your humility, you can't be humiliated. There is no rejection. There is no abandonment. You're seldom frustrated and disappointed, and you're able to easily and effortlessly let people, situations, and events that used to shape your feelings, you're able to let them go because you are in your purpose. My name is Jeffery Combs, President and Founder at Golden Mastermind Seminars Incorporated. You have an outstanding afternoon. It's an honor to be here with you. If you're watching this content as a former client, you'd like to reach out to me and access and find out more about my coaching for former clients, or you're a first-time watcher and like to find out more about my one-on-one coaching, please reach out to me. Have a great afternoon. Thanks and goodbye.